Okay, Tansei, Abo Stitch, Tanada. Hello, welcome. I will get started here with a land acknowledgement, and I will pass it over to Sesen.
Thanks, Kimberly. My name is Sesen. I'm the Planet Youth Manager for Forest Lawn. We'll do a round of introductions in a little bit, but I'll start with the land acknowledgement. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people that have been here for thousands of years and many generations. In Calgary, we acknowledge the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, Chiniki, Bearspaw, Wellesley, the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, and all the people that make their homes in Treaty 7, region of Southern Alberta. I also want to mark the violent histories of where we are with making note of and reminding us of the ongoing conflicts and contradictions of this land, this water, this air. When we enter any room, even and especially virtual rooms, we must bring these histories into view. With this knowledge, we enter, we meet here in hopes of making a different world.
Thank you, Sesen. That was beautiful. My name is Shelina Bata. I am here at the Genesis Center in Saddle Ridge. I use he, she, and her pronouns, and I am honored to be here presenting second year in a row. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelina. Hi, everyone. My name is Camille Losier. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Planet Youth Manager in Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Camille. Hi, everyone. My name is Edore Ossai. I am the Planet Youth Manager for Huntington Hill Tonecliff in Calgary. Thank you.
On behalf of Planet Youth, we would like to sincerely thank all of you for giving us your time to be here. And it is my privilege to be here representing Planet Youth. When I first heard the name Planet Youth for the very first time, it was a busy day at work, and my colleague just wanted to talk and tell me details about Planet Youth. And the only word I heard was the first youth word planet. And I got a flashback all the way back to my elementary school years when solar system was being taught to me, how I had to memorize all the planets, the planet song. Pluto was considered a planet back then, but that is not the case today. We are not here to learn about solar system, I promise. Jokes aside, we are very excited to share the actual information about Planet Youth Calgary. Planet Youth is a brand new initiative in our city. It is an evidence-based primary prevention approach, which was originally developed in Iceland to reduce substance use rates among young individuals and to positively impact their other life and health outcomes. So we would like to lead them to lead a healthy life. This is a long-term systematic model, and we are in the first of the 5-year pilot phase. Planet Youth was developed to address the risk factors and enhance the protective factors of the social and cultural environments for youth between ages 12 to 18. At that time, their rates for substance use was really, really high, as what we are experiencing right now here in Calgary as we speak. This is my favorite and most exciting slide out of the whole presentation. I'm very competitive by nature, so when I see the graph, it makes me really happy to see that the approach is effective and there is evidence to back it up. This data was shared to us by founders of this approach from Iceland, It did take 20 years. Yes, a long time. They started this approach in 1997. This is a long-term community-based grassroots approach, which resulted in dramatic reduction in alcohol consumption, smoking and cannabis use in grade 10 students. So like you can see the alcohol use, it was all the way close to 45%. And over the years, when they started working on this approach, the numbers are eventually going down, 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 down. And that is what we are hoping to see here in Calgary. Due to the success of this approach, Planet Youth is currently being adapted and implemented in over 16 countries worldwide. Planet Youth is also being implemented in Ontario, even in New Brunswick. Calgary is the first city in Western Canada to partner with Planet Youth and the very first to integrate an Indigenous parallel, which Kimberly will talk more about very shortly. Prior to pandemic, the chief of police here in Calgary approached the CEO of United Way, Karen Young, to ask her, how can we address the opioid crisis in our city? After some research on different primary prevention models, this Icelandic prevention model stood out as being one of the most successful models to reduce substance use and improve community well-being. So we are very excited to launch Planet Youth in Calgary and build a better future for our youth.
Thank you, Shelina. So on the screen here, you'll see the 4 pilot communities that Planet Youth is being launched in Calgary. And so I'll just provide a brief sort of overview of how these 4 pilot sites were selected. So together with Policy Wise for Children and Families, a nonprofit organization in Calgary, along with Planet Youth Calgary Working Committee, they work together to support Planet Youth Calgary through the planning, evaluation, and decision-making process in terms of site selection. So they gathered input from project stakeholders, literature, and various data sources to provide information on possible pilot sites. So key principles along this process included community need and readiness. So this included things like having a support facility in the neighborhood, so something like a YMCA or a recreation center or a library. Obviously, having sufficient youth population was also a really good indicator for a neighborhood being selected, as well as neighborhoods with high mental health needs, well-being needs, large number of alcohol and substance use facilities or businesses, and a large number of low-income families.
So here, these are the 4 communities. The pilot project is being started, and here we'll each take a moment to talk about the pilot communities we are affiliated with. Each one of us has tried to progress with the same vision, but using various community development strategies, relationship building, making connections, and learning what the model is about. This has enabled us to celebrate a tiny leap into the growth and success we have had in a short time since we started. This reminds me of a very popular quote from an African proverb, which states, and I quote, "If you want to go quickly, go alone. But if you want to go far, then go together," end of quote. We would like to go far together, and we would like to see the same or better results from the chart. And here again, I'm just being competitive by nature. We spent a lot of time to look into and develop the asset map of what the community agencies already exist, what faith groups are predominant in the particular neighborhood, who can we reach out to? And we took time to look and develop the asset map. We can empower these communities through participating in the community-based programs, what organizations we have been reaching out to, and what needs are there in the community, like overall, what are youth facing right now? What are their needs? What are they comfortable with? All these things we are doing at the moment. We did this by meeting individuals and people in group settings, and we are also doing feedback and surveys whenever we get an opportunity. I use an analogy of crossing the river. I will jump on the very first stone I see, and then I will make my way through those stones till we get to the other side. And we have a 10-step process, which Sesen will talk about in a little bit. She'll explain a little bit more about this process. But currently, I have been very fortunate to be in Saddle Ridge area, and my hub is the Genesis Center. This is the Recreation and Community Center, and it's a huge place. It's a very busy hub. We have an ongoing influx of many youth because of the high school next door. We have so much diversity, many multi-generational households, large families, and recent immigrants. A lot of work has gone into building strong resident involvement and community engagement. There are a lot of ongoing activities for various age groups. The very close one to me is the seniors program that happens here all the time. Seniors will just walk in, they will have craft sessions they can attend, or they can come just connect and socialize. And sometimes they'll just come make use of the tables and chairs that are around just to play card games. Now, we are trying to connect with other youth serving agencies and try to bring youth with seniors. So I think this would work out very wonderful in the sense that we are having intergenerational activity, but the results, I'm hoping to see very beautiful things come out of it, because seniors can tell their stories, and youth can learn something from them and even develop their leadership skills. We are also fortunate to have some strong support of our co-located partners here, which are YMCA and the Genesis Center Community Wing. We have Trellis Society. Under Trellis Society, we have 1,000 Voices, the Community Development Team, Building Youth Connections, and we have a huge Calgary Public Library. So we are counting on their support as well as we move forward. We have a presence of North of McKnight Community Hubs Initiative with a social worker from City of Calgary, as well as a few community connectors. So in short, in a nutshell, there's a lot of potential for us to have a solid alliance. In the fall, shortly after the schools open, we will be connecting with CBE and Catholic schools, school councils, parent councils, all in for youth coaches at the schools, counselors in schools, and all those who are affiliated one way or the other with youth programming. We do have a long journey ahead. We understand that, but we are optimistic and we hope to do well. We are creating a Planet Youth awareness by attending various community events. So if you happen to be celebrating Neighborhood Day on Saturday at the Genesis Center, this would be your chance to come meet us in person. Just come say hi. I will finish off by mentioning that on Tuesday evening between 6 to 8 p.m. on June 20th, we are hosting an in-person information session, very similar to this one, to what we are doing now. And this will be just for East Calgary agencies, community residents, parents, and even youth are invited to come attend. It will also be a great networking opportunity if you are just new joining in this field. So this would be a right time to come meet people in the Northeast area. We will be sharing our information, all of our information at the end of this presentation. Please feel free to reach out. We also have forwarded this invite to CDLI, the parent Planet Youth information session we are hosting. and they might be kind enough to just share it with you all. And we just are looking forward to connecting and meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelina. I have been connecting with community stakeholders in the Shaughnessy area. Zach, I see your comment in the chat, so it would be lovely to connect with you later. I've been in touch with school administrators, community serving organizations like Hull Services and the Family Resource Network, as well as our community associations. I am lucky to work at the Shaughnessy YMCA, which is under the same roof as the Calgary Public Library, Cardell Rec, and Bishop O'Byrne High School. So we see a lot of traffic through our facilities. Families come from surrounding neighborhoods to use the recreation and leisure spaces offered here. And we are at the end of the C train line, which brings a diverse demographic to this neighborhood. There is a range of socioeconomic status in this area, which presents different challenges. There is definitely a need for more community engagement, and a lot of the feedback we've been hearing so far is the need for mental health supports for youth, especially since the pandemic. I recently attended the Celebration of Learning at Samuel W. Shaw School to engage with parents and youth there, as well as the Mid-Sun Community Center kickoff to summer event this past weekend, which was a great way to spread the word and make new connections. I'll let Edore speak about her pilot site now.
Thank you so much, Camille. So I'm the Planet Youth Manager for Tonecliff, Greenville, Huntington Hills. It's like a 3-in-1 community. And this community, they are established community with many long-term, multi-generational residents. The community would benefit definitely from relationship building with youth in the community by engaging them. So one of the considerations why Planet Youth engaged the community was as a result of gaps identified such as free programming for youth that encompasses mentoring, creation, mentoring, recreation, pro-social activities, and mental health support. While the indigenous population is high in this community, there's not a lot of representation from indigenous residents in community organization and activities overall. And then Planet Youth has started working with one of the schools to run an indigenous circles for youth. Also, Planet Youth is collaborating with the community association, faith-based organization, the library, and the school to run programs in the community. So one of the reasons why this pilot site were also chosen was to have like a leisure place like the YMCA embedded in this community. But in a place like Tonecliff and Huntington, it's kind of unique because we do not have like a YMCA there, but we have the community associations and the community centers which have this space. So in the future, right now we are collaborating with this association to see how we can support youth in these facilities. And like on Saturday, Planet Youth will be collaborating with the Tonecliff Association on their Neighbor Day event to create awareness about the initiative. So if you happen to be in that area, you can stop by in our booth and learn more, just greet us as well. So the community also has space that are underutilized, and we hope to start using these spaces to engage youth in the community. So I'll pass it on to Sesen. Thank you.
Thanks, Edore. So yeah, I think I'm the Planet Youth Manager for the Greater Forest Lawn area, and I think unique to this area is that there's no central sort of hub or recreation center directly in Forest Lawn, and so I don't have a physical workspace. I'm kind of all over the place, but utilize the Forest Lawn Library quite a bit. And also, I think in contrast to some of the other pilot sites as well, the Greater Forest Lawn area has many existing initiatives and investments in the community, and is almost oversaturated with agencies and resources and programming. But at the same time, I think with that being said, there's a lack of coordination of these resources, and that's where I see the potential for Planet Youth in this area come into play. And so over the past few months, I've taken the time to engage with existing youth and adult agencies, serving agencies, mental health professionals, youth, and other stakeholders in the area to gauge the social and cultural landscape of the area. And we know that Calgary as a city is not homogeneous, and this is the same for many of its neighborhoods. And I think this is what makes our approach as Planet Youth unique, as the outcomes in each of these pilot sites very well might look quite different. And I think that's important to note, because Planet Youth is an Icelandic prevention model to substance use, and it was shown to be very successful in Iceland. But we know Iceland has a very homogeneous population, and so I think what's interesting about Planet Youth is that it can be adapted to many different places with many different demographics. And so while we are all sharing sort of a similar process, the outcomes are going to look quite different. And so we're taking a community-based approach, and given the nature of the Greater Forest Lawn area and its saturation of services, it's really important that I, as the facilitator of Planet Youth implementation here, take the time and due diligence to get to know the community and its inhabitants in order to build trust and relationships. The Greater Forest Lawn area is home to many racialized and low-income families, and it's important that Planet Youth as an initiative tailors its approach to the needs and interests of the community and remains flexible to what this may look like and how we may get there. So I'll pass it off to Kimberly.
Sesen. We're very fortunate that for Calgary, as Shelina had mentioned, we're one of the first, if not the first, to implement an Indigenous parallel within the Planet Youth model. And this Indigenous parallel will be woven into each pilot site. I also wanted to take a chance to introduce myself, as I don't think I did earlier on. My name is Kimberly Van Patten. I'm originally from Treaty 8 territory, so that's in northern Alberta. I'm Cree and Métis and of mixed European ancestry, and I'm a member of the Tall Cree First Nation up in that territory. And I've been a visitor here in Treaty 7 and in Calgary specifically for 14 years. And I really encourage you, along with your questions, to put your name, your organization or school, as I noticed that there might be some students in the room. So your name, organization, and where you're calling in from in the chat as well. So we'll go to the next slide. I am going to talk a little bit more about the Indigenous parallel. So as I mentioned, we're one of the first to be introducing and implementing an Indigenous parallel with the model. So we've been getting quite a bit of attention in our process and how we've been going along this journey. And I think it was vital that for Planet Youth to be successful in the Calgary context, and as Sesen mentioned, like the model itself is quite adaptable and is made to be adapted to your local community context. For us, we thought it was pivotal that Indigenous voices, cultures, worldviews, languages, knowledges be respected and honored. And in order to make this initiative thrive and be sustainable, we needed to honor Indigenous voices. So in terms of the parallel, the what and the why. So the what is the parallel? That's been a question that we've been asked. And paralleling is essentially a methodology or a way of building better understanding, respect, and trust. So we can parallel and draw alignments, right, to each other's concepts, approaches, and practices. So specifically, we're thinking about Indigenous concepts, approaches, practices, worldviews, and Western ways of knowing. And how we've kind of came to understand this, and this is something that our elders have talked about, but also a teaching and a concept that is recognized in several communities out east, specifically in the Wampum Belt, is this concept of two canoes going down a river together. So in Planet Youth Calgary, it's essential for us to see us as holistic, right? So we're not Indigenous parallel versus a Western parallel of Planet Youth. Rather, we're working towards the same vision. We're going down the same river, but how we get there may be a little bit different at times. But I think the goal is that we're always constantly in communication with each other and working together, supporting each other in our work. Yeah, in terms of the why, I mean, there's many reasons why we would want to do this. So I think, as I mentioned, the number one thing is in order to make this initiative sustainable and to do this in a good way and in an ethical way, we needed to make a parallel. I think we also wanted to honor our commitment. So I work as the Indigenous lead with United Way, which is one of the leading organizations in Calgary for this initiative, but we partner with several large organizations, which will be mentioned a little bit later, but I'll mention a couple of them now. So along with United Way, we partner with the YMCA, Trellis, and our Indigenous partner, Muskanawa. And we wanted to honor the commitments to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, UNDRIP, MMIWG2S, and I know that's acronyms and I can put them in the chat later, but we wanted to honor these movements that are addressing the impacts of intergenerational trauma and colonization. I think also in terms of the why, I mean, the stats, right? So the stats can be kind of dooming at times, but those stats specifically around, the higher prevalence of youth suicide rates, education rates are a little bit lower sometimes, higher poverty rates, more children being involved in the child welfare system, youth justice system. And in 2020 alone, 75% of United Way's funded programs served Indigenous people. So I think there was a lot of commitments, and there was timely opportunities to bring a few different guiding principles and frameworks to life. So as I mentioned, I work with United Way, and we have the Gakshman strategy, which is our Indigenous strategy. So we felt that with the strategy, which we've worked a lot with local elders and community members, there's been a lot of validation for the strategy. So we saw that, this strategy could help make the parallel come to life and guide us in this work together, along with our partner Muskanawa's guiding framework, Wakotowin, which means relationships. So both of these strategies are very relational focused, very community focused. And we felt that what better frameworks to guide the parallel process, but also the work that we're doing with Planet Youth. So as in the previous slide, the managers had mentioned, they've been building a lot of relationships with community, making connections, networking. And in the Indigenous parallel, borrowing from Agapshiman's principles, we've been calling that making relatives. So I think in terms of seeing Planet Youth Calgary as a holistic entity and not separating out the parallel, even the principle of making relatives is something that has been used across all of Planet Youth Calgary, not just the Indigenous parallel. So we want to honor Indigenous knowledges, voices, experiences, as I've mentioned. So we've been connecting with Indigenous youth. We work with 9 elders from the different nations around Calgary. We've also been making relatives with Indigenous serving agencies to kind of determine what does the parallel look like, feel like, sound like across these pilot sites. We have connections with several Indigenous serving agencies such as Awatan, USAY, Hull Services, Braiding the Sweetgrass, Aboriginal Friendship Center, just to name a few. We also work with 3 youth elders that guide us in this work. So these youth elders are older youth. They're in their early 20s who can speak directly to that youth experience, but then also connect to that idea of peer mentorship and leadership and role modeling for other youth. One last thing I'll mention is ceremony and culture has been pivotal, essential to the work. because it ensures our responsibility and accountability, and it's a part of our validation. And I think also too, what we've heard from elders and youth is that connection to community and culture is vital to health and well-being, which is what we're really aiming to do in Calgary. A few of our upcoming things, we've been doing a lot in terms of including ceremony and gatherings. So we've had talking circles, a tea dance, a couple tea dances actually. We're working on our own creation story to tell the story of Planet Youth Calgary with elders and youth. We will also be hosting a naming ceremony so that, the Indigenous Parallel will have an actual name rather than us calling it Indigenous Parallel all the time. And then we'll also be hosting a pipe ceremony as kind of our official launch, one of our official launches, I should say, of all of Planet Youth Calgary in the fall, to kind of demonstrate and announce our commitments to the community. And yeah, it's very exciting time for us. So I will pass it on to Edore.
Thank you, Kimberly. So I'm just going to talk about the primary focus area of Planet Youth. So in Calgary, Planet Youth seek to address the risks and protective factors of youth. And the focus is to listen to the youth voice and help guide how best to support them in their environment in living a positive life. And this focus in some 4 primary domains, which is the family, peer groups, schools, and leisure. The common denominator between all these groups is also the youth. That's why we are focusing on the youth voice to help us address any gap they have identified. These 4 areas has been known to influence the well-being. We cannot testify like as youths at one point in our life, and if not all, some of these factors actually influence decisions we make. So Planet Youth is taking on these 4 factors to actually see how best we can support the youth well-being. And also primary focus is the youth voice. We can also see how from listening to the youth, we can also help to address some of these challenges they are facing in their community and how we can best address those challenges around them. So if I can go to the next slide to give an example. So this is what has happened in other places. So precisely, it's an Icelandic model we are trying to adopt here. So these are some of the results of what happened in Iceland as Planet Youth was implemented. So it has a few examples of how this approach has been implemented. In Iceland, they created like I'll take for example, the leisure card. They created a leisure card program when youth identified that they were bored and couldn't go anywhere, and going for leisure was quite expensive. So they had to create a leisure card to ease that. Also, what was also identified as a result of a survey that was carried out for the youth, it was found out that they were getting drunk from home, and Planet Youth wanted to address that and found out that it wasn't just parents handing down alcohol to to the kids, but instead like they leave it unkept and they go out, and before you know, kids are very inquisitive. They go in, they drink one, and before you know, they started getting drunk from home. So Planet Youth had to create a parent cafe to be able to address that. So though Planet Youth is focused on youth voice, but also things around the youth that will support them to live a better life. So that's the same model we're implementing in Calgary to see what the youths are saying. So if it means there's a challenge in the community, Planet Youth will try its best to address that challenge that has been identified by the youth in the community. So you can just take a look at the slides for some of the, these are some of the examples, and we hope to actually implement this in our various community. Thank you.
Thanks, Edore. We just have a few minutes here, so I'm going to quickly kind of speak to the next couple of slides and then let Camille wrap up with our contact info. But this is the 10-step model for the Planet Youth model that's used kind of globally for all the Planet Youth sites. So Planet Youth Calgary is currently in steps 1 to 3. So we are kind of working on community engagement, like we've spoken about, kind of developing our local coalitions, planning for the data collection phase, and capacity building. And so we've spent a lot of time in the last few months doing these few things here, and we'll continue to do that up until we're ready for the data collection piece in early 2024. But really the first 3 steps here are the foundation for the implementation of the model here in Calgary. And they take time, and we know that having strong coalitions will allow us to kind of follow through with the rest of the steps more smoothly. And so the data collection piece, again, we're not here quite yet, but there is a Planet Youth survey that will be administered to junior high and high schools, approximately 4 per community. And so we're currently in communication with the school boards to get approval for that process. And so that's happening behind the scenes. But once those surveys are administered, we get the results quite quickly. There's a 6-week turnaround. And then, of course, that the results from the surveys, that data is the foundation for our work moving forward. We use those results to inform the solutions that we come up with together with our coalitions.
Thanks, Sesen. I think that instead of rushing through these last few slides, maybe we'll just skip to the end and allow the last couple of minutes for anyone who has any questions.
I have lots of questions, but I think that they might not do well in a large group setting. I'd love to learn a little bit more about where the longer term piece of the strategy kind of takes you, and where the 4 pilots kind of anchor you back into community, and where you're hoping to see that kind of go from here.
Yes, please email me, Zach, and we can set up a meeting and chat and give you more details.
Camille, please, can you go back to the slide that has the information in case anybody wants to reach out?
So I've also put our contact information in the chat. So take a screenshot or just copy and paste from the chat there. Kimberly added hers as well. So that pretty much wraps it up for us. It's 9:59. Thank you all so much for being here with us. We really appreciate your time. And again, just keep an eye out for Planet Youth. We're going to be engaging at lots of events this summer. So get engaged with your communities. If you have anyone that wants to get involved or anyone you think would be a good fit for the work we're doing with Planet Youth, get in touch, share the information with them, and just wait and see, what we're doing over the next few years.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Just to add to what Camila said, Planet Youth is community-based, and part of the long term is community taking ownership and responsibility. We are there to support, but the community has to run it. So if there's anyone we should be connecting with, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your presence and your time.